Booking fees and incarceration costs. The latest revenue generation tools for money-hungry governments. The Supreme Court is preparing to consider the legality of a couple new methods the police and courts have devised to generate revenue for the state. In several states, including Minnesota, Colorado, and Kentucky, have begun implementing fees and incarceration cost reimbursement charges against those who are arrested as a way to raise money for police and governmental budgets. Much like their earlier forerunner to policing for profit, asset forfeiture and seizure laws, these fees are not based on a conviction, and many times those subjected to them don't even end up having charges filed against them. Another similarity is that the process for recouping them are either non-existent or so difficult or expensive that it generally makes it not worth the effort, and most people simply allow the theft to stand. Of course, that's the point, since the policies have nothing to do with justice, but rather are solely intended to raise revenue for the state and its enforcement structures. Via the New York Times, Corey Statham had $46 in his pockets when he was arrested in Ramsey County, Maine, and charged with disorderly conduct. He was released 2 days later, and the charges were dismissed. But the county kept $25 of Mr. Statham's money as a booking fee. It returned the remaining $21 on a debit card subject to an array of fees. In the end, it cost Mr. Statham $7.25 to withdraw what was left of his money. The Supreme Court will soon consider whether to hear Mr. Statham's challenge to Ramsey County's fundraising efforts, which are part of a national trend to extract fees and fines from people who find themselves enmeshed in the criminal justice system. Kentucky bills people held in its jails for the costs of incarcerating them, even if all charges are later dismissed. In Colorado, 5 towns raise more than 30% of their revenue from traffic tickets and fines. In Ferguson, Mo, city officials have consistently set maximizing revenue as the priority for Ferguson's law enforcement activity, a Justice Department report found last year. An unusual coalition of civil rights organizations, criminal defense lawyers, and conservative and libertarian groups have challenged these sorts of policies, saying they confiscate private property without constitutional protections and lock poor people into a cycle of fines, debts and jail. The Supreme Court has already agreed to hear a separate challenge to a Colorado law that makes it hard for criminal defendants whose convictions were overturned to obtain refunds of fines and restitution, often amounting to thousands of dollars. That case, Nelson v. Colorado, will be argued on January 9. The Colorado law requires people who want their money back to file a separate lawsuit and prove their innocence by clear and convincing evidence. The sums at issue are smaller in Ramsey County, which includes St. Paul. But they are taken from people who have merely been arrested. Some of them will never be charged with a crime. Others, like Mr. Statham, will have the charges against them dismissed. Still others will be tried but acquitted. It is all the same to the county, which does not return the $25 booking fee even if the arrest does not lead to a conviction. Instead, it requires people like Mr. Statham to submit evidence to prove they are entitled to get their money back. When the case was argued last year before the United States Court of Appeals for the 8th Circuit in St. Paul, a lawyer for the county acknowledged that its process was in tension with the presumption of innocence. There is some legwork involved, the lawyer, Jason M. Hively said, but noted that it is possible for blameless people to get their $25 back. They can do it as soon as they have the evidence that they haven't been found guilty. The legwork proved too much for Mr. Statham. He never got his $25 back. He did get a debit card for the remaining $21. But there was no practical way to extract his cash without paying some kind of fee. Among them, $1.50 a week for maintenance of the unwanted card, starting after 36 hours. $2.75 for using an ATM to withdraw money. $3 for transferring the balance to a bank account. And $1.50 for checking the balance. In its appeals court brief, The county said the debit cards were provided for the convenience of the inmates, who might find it hard to cash a check. Mr. Statham is represented by Michael A. Carvin, a prominent conservative lawyer who has argued Supreme Court cases challenging the Affordable Care Act and fees charged by public unions. Mr. Carvin said the county's motives were not rooted in solicitude for the people it had arrested. Revenue-starved local governments are increasingly turning toward fees like Ramsey counties in order to bridge their budgetary gaps, he wrote in a Supreme Court brief. But the unilateral decision of a single police officer cannot possibly justify summarily confiscating money. Providing a profit motive to make arrests, he said, gives officers an incentive to make improper arrests. Obviously, these debit cards with their outrageous fees are anything but convenient. Also, while it's beside the point from the start, the notion that an arbitrary fee based on no crime having been committed is valid, because in the eyes of the courts it is not a large fee represents unnecessary and undue hardship for many poor people that are barely making it on what they have already.